Hi, I'm Paul Chase. For those of you who've not seen my podcast before, my background is I spent 23 years running pubs and bars on Merseyside and a similar period of time training people to work in the licensed retail sector. Um, I've just come from watching the Prime Minister announcing on the news that there's going to be a delay to Freedom Day that was set for June the 21st. Apparently, the government feels that it needs another 4 weeks to get more jabs in arms to stop the hospitals being overwhelmed in the autumn and the winter with cases of COVID. I think that my concern is that this won't be the last delay. And there's no doubt that in the past, the government's track record on all of this has not been a good one. If you think back to March last year, we were promised that the lockdown would last 3 weeks to flatten the curve and save the NHS, they said. And then it went on for longer. We had a brief reopening in the summer, and then lockdown and restrictions again in the autumn, a brief reopening over Christmas, a lifting of some restrictions, and then a full lockdown after Christmas. And then the roadmap kicked in February of this year. 4 stages, and we've gone through 3 of them. And at each stage, more and more people have got the jab. So now the decision has been made to delay Freedom Day until July the 19th. As I say, my fear is that that's not going to be the last delay. So the trade needs to consider what it's going to do about this if yet another reason or excuse is found to delay even longer. And I think they've got to consider all manner of peaceful protest and peaceful acts of civil disobedience in order to drive home to the government that we're not going to accept any further delays. The problem for the licensed trade, of course, is that pubs, clubs, bars all hold alcohol licenses, and it's easy for people to be brave about other people's businesses and say just open and ignore the restrictions. If pubs, clubs and bars do that, they don't just stand the risk of heavy fines, they could also have their licenses reviewed and taken off them, their premises closed down. So we've got to think outside the box in terms of what kind of things we could do to make the government take notice, to make them realise there's going to be a price to be paid. And if you look at what has happened abroad, particularly in France, take some of the protests that the transport union has done over there. They'll put 200 trucks on a motorway and drive down at 10 miles an hour. The media can't ignore that kind of thing like they've ignored the protest marches that have happened recently. So the government has to realise that if they renege on the July 19th date, there will be political consequences. And I'm prepared to sit down with people in the trade and trade leaders, and I know most of them, and discuss novel ways in which we can act to make the government pay a political price and make them realise that we're going to do these things if they renege on the July 19th date. I know from speaking to all my friends in the trade how difficult this last 15 months has been. And yes, they've survived, or many of them have, and yes, government support has helped. But they're on life support, and many premises, another 4 weeks is going to be very, very difficult. Even those premises that are open at the moment are at best breaking even, and some of them losing money. We need to be able to trade without restrictions. We need to be able, as businesses, to make a profit. And that word shouldn't be a dirty word. The time has come to put responsibility back to people and away from the state, and to get the businesses open again. I saw the protests that happened outside Downing Street earlier today, and one of the posters that summed up my emotion about all of this was one that said, "Enough is enough." I've had enough. Everybody I know in the trade, from local publicans to business leaders, have had enough. And that is the message that needs to be sent to the government, that we all feel enough is enough.